Wow, you all are self-quieting at Michigan time. That's remarkable. This is amazing. I think the information density of this room is at maybe an all-time high. Please allow me to self-aggrandize here for a minute. If you do know of a time of being in here when the information density was higher than this or at this level, don't tell me yet. Because I love this, and it reminds me of a word that a dear friend of mine taught me. It's a word that he learned from somebody who was a immigrant from Russia to Israel, and the word is balagan. Does anybody know this word already, balagan? It means a mess, but a good kind of mess, and I'm so pleased by the balagan that you all have been complicit in here. So in the nature of a mess, and so that we don't turn this beautiful modality of poster session into the boring one I was trying to avoid, which is presentation, the way that I imagine that we can make this work would be, I know that your groups have, not all of you have all of your members today, but I think each of your groups has at least 3 people today. I think that's probably true. Is anybody in a group where you're looking around for your groupies and like, yeah, I think we have at least 3. At best, we've got 5. Some of you might have 4. So the way that I would love to have this work is for one person from the group to be present with the poster at all times. And if you are not that person, then it is your privilege, your pleasure, and mine to go exploring other posters. And if we do that in roughly 15-minute intervals, if you go and see 4 other posters every 15 minutes, most of us, I think, will see most of the posters. And then we'll leave them up for the, bless you, for the second part of the class. Does that make sense? And before I turn everyone loose to represent these posters, and by the way, feel free to move them around. Some of them are a little precarious. I pinned many of them, and I may have pinned it crooked. Feel free to improve the sighting of your poster. But the idea is for everybody to walk around and to admire each other's posters and get a feel what everybody did. And then in the second part, then we'll take a break. So we'll do that for about an hour, then we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we have an expert in immersive graphics from Deloitte Global Consulting here with us. He's also going to check out the posters and was checking himself in the interval to not already be looking at these things, because this is his field, and you all, I think, are speaking his language. So after we take a break, then we will talk about AR, VR from what's going on in the industry standpoint with somebody who knows. So, so just to orient everybody to what we are doing here, what are these posters about? You may recall the very flimsy explanation that I gave you a couple of weeks ago, which is that there is a place in San Francisco at Fort Mason that I love, that was built by an architect called Chris Alexander and his students at the University of California at Berkeley. They were invited to build that by Stuart Brand, who is a futurist, globalist, environmentalist, and one of my friends who works at the Long Now Foundation, which was started in part by Stuart Brand. That's Nick on that picture. He works at the Long Now Foundation, and he didn't know anything about this patch. It's in a very funny place, as you all now know. So the assignment in a nutshell was, if we can move the computer, I wanted all of you to do some sort of a project about this physical place. And the project idea was, the client is the US Park Service. That's who in real life has ultimate authority over this place in Fort Mason. And the idea was the Parks Department knows that AR and VR are going to be essential to providing good experiences to visitors and to being a good neighbor. And there's lots and lots of reasons that we just, by fiat, we said the Park Service is interested in this. We're using this funny little bench at Fort Mason as a physical space to point a demo at. And so each of these student projects then is a demo. And some of you were given AR as the modality for what you were working on, and some of you were given VR as the modality to be working in. And one of the funny curveballs that I threw at this, because this bench was built by Chris Alexander, one of the things that he is best known for, especially in the field of computing, is something called pattern language. And each of your groups was given one of the patterns from the pattern language, either to use whole hog to the extent that any of it was useful to you, but some of you took some extra credit and rewrote this pattern for your own purposes based on what you learned doing your project. And those 4 patterns were sleeping in public, Zen view, intimacy gradient, and holy ground. And so you all made these posters, and the evaluation of the poster will be in terms of the rubric that I gave you. So the parts of the poster that I'm going to be looking for everybody having the parts that you have generated and ranked an idea of based on your archetypal user and the scenario of use. What are the things that people would want to do, especially relative to your pattern? Then the next piece of this poster is that you will have some kind of a conceptual model that speaks to the pattern and to that list of the jobs that you think people want to do. And then lastly, but not least, that you would develop a snapshot or a mock-up. I told many of you 1 second from somebody using this thing, if you just, which you can't call it a screenshot anymore, but a moment from use as a mock-up. And that I'll be looking for agreement between the mock-up and the model, between the model and the pattern, and all of that comes together in your marvelous posters. So, yeah, does it have all the parts? That is going to be half of the points. I think most of you already have all those points. Agreement between your models, agreement between the model and the mock-up, clarity and presentation aesthetics of the poster, 10%, that's very subjective. We'll tell you when we grade this our reasons why, but that's going to be a little bit subjective. And then the opportunity for 10 extra points or 10% extra if you rewrite the pattern. So that is, that's why these posters are a thing. And so now if you all go to your posters, figure out who's going to be your first stay in place person. In a minute or 2, we will start floating around, the rest of us. And I'm going to try to broadcast my floating around so that I can record it. And I will mute this because it's not. Okay, whose poster is this?
This is our poster.
Okay.
Our original pattern was sleeping in public using homeless people as an archetypal user and AR as our modality.
Okay.
However, we have some moral objection to this combination of,
please.
Of entities because we feel like AR, like Christopher Alexander is designing for a world that is utopian, but unfortunately we don't feel we live in that world right now. So we had to reconcile, like, how do you design an AR that is a direct service to homeless people while also reconciling that with like the reality, like designing for reality of life.
Yeah.
Because it's not that, I mean, to sleep on a bench, you know, it's like, hey, like it's a positive feeling according to Christopher Alexander. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it is not. Homeless people are indicative of the social ills of poverty. So we wanted to serve this community in a way that is, this camera is right in my face. We want to serve this community in a way that fits the framework of AR and how it's best used today. And how it's best used today is for information purposes.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing. So we identify target users, and we're working with context in Ann Arbor. So they have to be local to Ann Arbor and the Washington County. They could be at risk of homeless and also currently homeless. So there's varying degrees of their needs. It could also be teens and adults, single or families of the migrants, and this should also be tech proficient. So we did some study, and like they're overwhelmingly reliant on technology given their high level of disability. So they tend to be like high using smartphones as well.
Yep.
So we've also identified a local information repository. So what are the main like nonprofit property managers here in Ann Arbor that also serve the homeless? So there's actually a structure association for Washington County, and there's like over 10 members of nonprofits here in Ann Arbor alone. So the biggest one, I volunteered for Avalon Housing, and I know that they provide supporting housing services and youth development to help for youth program. They also have a substance abuse treatment plan. They also have like even sterile syringes. That's a very like controversial topic, but they came up with that because they operate under the housing first approach, as that housing should be a human right, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from. You don't have to prove your income. You don't have to prove like your employment status. You should be entitled to housing.
Nice.
So we're working towards that effect. And there are also others. Ozone House that's more teen oriented, and then also an area in Washington County that works with permanent supportive housing. We also want to identify locations that could be used because we have two types of areas we want to use. Like one is a smart home for more internet experience, and then the other one is like these large interactive displays that can be placed that can be used by anyone. So where do they best work? So from my experience, like I work at Almendinger Park on Hollywood Boulevard because there's a huge like Avalon housing community there. But you're not going to find as many homeless people because it's a larger residential area. So just from my experience, I know that Liberty Plaza, there's some community members there. Also, just overall downtown Ann Arbor, this is another chapter one, and also near Pioneer High because we want to reach out to teenagers as well. So we devised at least two user journey maps. So one is in the context of a teen who's looking to talk to someone or also just someone in general that needs permanent housing. And then so I mentioned the two types of AR interfaces. So one is like a smartphone for more internet experience, and then the other one is like 40 by 27 inch interactive display.
Nice.
And I don't know if my partner would like to do some journey.
Sure. So can you explain this?
Oh yeah. You can do the journey map and the part.
Okay. So for the journey map, we essentially targeted two kinds of users. One is homeless people, which we were given, and also the deprived teams, which we think they're also an important segment of our population.
Yep.
And so basically, how it works is the first phase is they identify the need. And so for that, we have two different modes of information seeking. One will be an interactive screen, which will be located at ideal locations in the public. And assuming that they already own a smartphone, that will be an additive app as well. So the first that they start with what they want to look for. In the case of homeless, it will be housing. In the case of teens, it will be something like food, shelter, or any kind of counseling or aid.
Okay.
And then the process goes like this: like you navigate on the screen, you basically enter information like what gender you identify with, what's your age, how much do you earn monthly, any disability, who all are in your family, and based on that, it will based on that personalized data, it will generate show you the specific results of what different housing you could look at.
Wow.
And that will be via map view and as through an AR view as well. So, for example, you locate this property and you tap that, and it will show you information such as what features there are, like how many beds, how many baths, and so on and so forth. The important one is the services, what different services are available to them, like 24/7 on-call crisis response, assistance with basic needs, advocacy and support, basically, and programs, also programs such as what different programs for like health development, community engagement, and so on and so forth. So, and finally, they can contact the respective housing and locate them.
That's great. And the different users, is the journey the same?
More or less, because the needs are basically the same. So just that what they are essentially looking for is kind of segregated.
Yep.
But essentially how they start and how they end on the.
And the choreography of the information is the same? Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rooms and building that have different levels of intimacy. Like in a house, your front entrance, if you're a guest, maybe that's going to be that. The kitchen might be have different types of interactions between the owners of the house and guests. And as you move farther back into the bedroom, the owners of the house, it's a very different space. So we tried to recreate that, except we don't really have the ability of having different rooms in this one open space. So we made our intimacy gradient or something that the user can choose. So they can switch between like a public experience or a more private experience depending on what they want.
And am I right, the private experience includes editing out other people from the, and increasing the amount of sunshine, if that's what we want?
Yeah, so you can change the lighting. Like even in our public space, if you want to see sort of what the view would look like at a different time of day based on screenshots, you can do that. In the private space, you can also add music, or maybe sort of like a Zen kind of guided meditation if you just kind of want to rest and relax.
That's great. And is there a ViewMaster thingy that's been, is that added in the augmented view?
We imagine that for the public space, that's how you would get the augmented, all the information overlays that you don't even need your
Oh,
own
so you're
device.
not bringing your own device. That's awesome. I wonder if that's a thing anywhere in the world.
With AR, we don't know. We kind of were inspired by just the little telescopes that you put.
But I mean, that is,
in
I mean, at least for me, that's like, I know exactly what that is. When I was a little kid, it's like, I want a quarter. I want to go look across the gorge. Because we didn't bring binoculars, so you could rent binoculars. Wow. That's awesome. Nice. Hey, what did you make?
So our pattern was the intimacy gradient for a repeated visitor of the Fort Mason bench, or a repeated tenant.
Yep.
And the first challenge I think with doing this was the idea of applying, degrees of privacy or intimacy into a public outdoor space.
Yeah.
Right. So the way we kind of got around that was to reframe our concept of intimacy to mean personalization of information or stimulus.
Nice.
So you're not going to have privacy in this public bench that anyone can access in the physical sense, but the way we got around that was with the augmented reality to provide a level of personalization and the kind of stimulus that you would be wanting at that moment. And the fact that it's also a repeated user, there's some recognition of the times you've been there in the past and maybe the settings or the stimulus that you're most that you're seeking out.
And it looks like your journey creates a relationship between spatial proximity to the bench and intimacy.
Yeah, proximity to the bench, but also where you are around the bench. So when we were looking at images of the bench online, it seemed that there was an access point on one side and that another side was blocked. So as you proceed into the space and then move along the bench, that's how we mirrored this idea of the gradient of intimacy. So
that's great.
Farther along farther past the entrance point would be.
And this is transparency over printouts?
Yep.
Love it. That's great. Nice. Nice work. Whose poster is this? Can you tell me about it?
Also, our pattern is sleeping in public, so we are designing AR for fundraising tenants. We're basically thinking about providing a 15 to 20 minutes nap or meditation. We will firstly let the users to download the application to do some settings. For example, the times or weather, cloud, noises. After they finish this setting, they can reuse this setting every time they went to the bench. And there are several options. Like first one is basic view. We will provide timer here and also the weather reports here. If the time they set up and the weather change, it will alert the user to wake up. And also we have alerts like when some people approach you, it will also alert the user. So this can protect their personal belongings and safety. And the second view is the meditation view. So this color represents the stage of the meditation. And the third view is the artistic view. Since people live in coordination, it's like kind of artistic. So we provide this option. They can change the scenery into a painting style.
That's marvelous. I love the maps that you made. It's really easy to tell where it is and what's going on without being highly detailed.
So this first paragraph reads like this artist comes back to the spot because they're familiar with the spot, they like the spot. I was surprised actually by the second paragraph. My idea just ran down to it's more just my idea. My idea ran down, I think for because reading this, I thought she would come here to go paint. I think she was going to go find inspiration from art. And it's like
outside it's not completely true. So we changed them to like a star or a triangle like that. The shape depends on what's set. Semi-private or a private setting. And then also because we want to cater it more to the population, we thought about offering community services within social work framework. So a common social work is like macro, meso, and micro interventions, meso being like a semi-private intervention. So a macro level community service, they would be able to access it further away from the bench space, and then they would be able to access more micro level community service interventions as they're seated at the bench instead of like primary intimacy, like the private side.
So one of the pivoted to screen to bring that like where
So for the homeless population, we thought about the jobs to be done by trying to mimic an intimacy gradient for a dependent population. So what do we think the homeless population would want, seeing somebody can't run focus groups? And a sense of privacy would be an important thing that they may want. So because that makes intimacy gradient there would be increasing options that they could opt into. And so they get to the bench, and when they're sitting at the bench, that's the most extreme level of privacy that they could experience. And we kind of mimicked privacy by manipulating visual and audio options. So audio options, for example.
I love that.
Noise
canceling. Wow. And fair to say that the majority or more of the options become available as you get closer in proximity to being at the site?
Yes, yeah, and then because safety was such a huge issue, we decided that, like, for example, when they're in the private setting, that would only be, like, those options would only be available if they were, like, the GPS signal that they were sitting in one place, so not moving.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. So architects can redesign the bench? Wow.
And for this example, that they don't redesign the bench itself exactly. Actually, they can redesign. Yeah.
So great.
So actually, they can.
Oh my
redesign
God.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may build a small house there, where they just delete the bench itself. And also, for this example, we are trying to make a wall so that they cannot see the ocean.
Yes. Based on the pattern of the Zen view. That's wonderful.
And also, we can just create a small window here so that they can see the ocean in a very different perspective.
I love the mock-up. That is really wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, why don't we rotate out? If you've been presenting for the last 15 or so minutes, you are relieved when somebody from your group comes and relieves you.
Preserving the understanding of the whole by
For sounds.
Hello.
Hello. Whose poster is this?
It's ours.
Tell me about it.
We had to look in public. So our app tries to take care of like two major things, which is like addressing like personal user comfort and addressing environmental disturbances.
Yep.
So our app will like track the weather and track tourist activity and tell you when it's a good time to go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Our app will provide like soothing images of flying dolphins and like
Because that helps.
musical accompaniment or what have you to help fall asleep.
Oh, that's
You
great.
can set an alarm with it. It can tell you when your next activity or whatever it is. And also we wanted our app to specifically monitor police presence because that was something specific in our pattern and also is an actual real problem, like probably more of a problem than when the pattern
The
was
police
written.
thing is in the Alexander pattern?
Yeah.
About how they're no fun when it comes to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so being able to track police activity to some degree and alert you when like cops are near.
That's great. Does it let you be moving around while it's augmenting your reality?
I mean, presumably you're lying down, but like you
Yep.
can like look around.
Yep. I love how straightforward your annotations and illustrations are. Was it hard to find the right level of how to illustrate these ideas?
I don't think so.
I think it has that we had the jobs to be done and we had like our assumptions already that, so we filtered out, like we're assuming that people don't need help navigating, so we got rid of a lot of noise essentially, so we narrowed down on like this is what we're trying to do, so which kind of mapped out to the mock-ups to be.
That's great. It's very clear. Nice work. Thank you.
Virtual reality, the daylight behind you is changing. So when you get to the bench being somewhat late, it's at high noon, and you can kind of hopefully have like a religious experience with it. So sort of like the school in Japan, we were talking about that one day where kids go back just to like feel the space again. We kind of want that to be here. Hopefully we can get you there. But if not, you keep going through the motions, and then you end with the final bench being done. You get to see its current way, and you can see sort of how the bench has shaped the environment and how the environment has shaped the bench. So that's kind of our.
This is interesting. Our group also had Holy Ground.
Yeah.
When we were thinking about the passage of time. So I'm glad to see you guys. But yours sort of led up to present day.
Yeah, so we wanted to end it with like, how was it today? Like, how was it done? It's sort of like a living corner in the dark, in the dark. You're trying to.
So is the cycle one day? Like,
yeah, so it's one day. So the idea is, since they were supposed to be returning architecture students, is that so like with religions, at least like Western ones that I know, when you join, you usually have an act or something you have to do to be the drive to get into this, starting with the sketch, and then after that you kind of enter from wherever applications. And so we wanted that to be part of this. Like you can enter from wherever after you get the first thing. So that's why it's a circle around the bench. So if you know, like, oh, I want to go back to the build phase, then you can put that set and walk to wherever that is in the VR and get there and see and interact with it again. So that was the idea behind returning architecture students. Like, you keep going back, but it is a circle.
We wanted for architecture students to be able to return like different aspects of the process of actually building the bench. The whole idea of the cycle is like how the bench is built, so when you get there, it's not there, and then you can watch the experience of him building it, changing it, building it, working with the community, so you're actually understanding that whole process. So it's like our mock-up is a fun so you can see like what materials were used, our guesses of what materials were used.
steel bars were probably in the mix.
Yeah, well, yeah, we saw it in the picture.
Yeah.
Steel bars keep you from falling.
I mean, like, we didn't break jobs to be done because we thought that, like, in the Holy Ground, you have to go through certain rates. So there is, like, this order. You can't just choose which job until you've done it once, and then the contract you can, but the one is like, each bubble is like one step you have to progress.
We have to see what you have to put in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see the plan.
Make it look classic.
So we have him here. Run through it with you?
Yes.
Okay, so our concept is virtual reality experience for tourists planning to come to the Fort Mason bench for the first time using the Holy Ground pattern. So we use the Fort Mason bench as context as a sacred place, and we wanted to give tourists the experience to experience the bench in a sacred manner. So we put it into the context of San Francisco so that users will have to go through and explore and slowly transition layer by layer to the bench, and giving them that experience that the bench is sacred and it goes from something very busy, very crowded and loud to slowly transition to something that's quieter, peaceful, and sacred for the user. Yeah, so going from these different layers all the way to the bench. This is a little picture of what it might look like in the very last stage.
It's so great. It's so great.
Yeah, where the user is, exploring. At this point, they're by themselves in the forest. They're exploring, and they come across a gate that shows to the bench. So, when you get there, it's like this very personal, private, sacred experience for the user.
That's marvelous.
Any questions that you guys might have?
How about a sense of user interface? Did you imagine voice
Yes.
is the way that you would change something or indicate?
So we actually talked about multiple senses being a part of the experience itself. It's more so a four-dimensional VR sort of experience where we're talking about sound, smell, and even like the feel of it changing. So one of the things we talk about is customizing the user experience. So some people are religiously inclined towards a certain experience while some aren't.
Yeah.
For a person who might be a Hindu versus a Christian, the smell of a religious or a sacred space is different versus bells sounding is different. Just to give you a contrasting idea of how a spiritual experience might change for someone who may be like religiously inclined towards their experiences versus someone who may have never experienced any of this before. So we want to be able to let them at one point choose as they get closer to the sacred space what they want to experience when they do actually reach the bench. And that experience is a multi-sensory one once they actually make it. It's not just them like landing at this, but it kind of like smells and feels and looks more inclined towards their preference.
Hands, eyes, ears,
yes,
sense of space.
Yep.
And tell me a little more about the challenges.
So
to keep you going deeper into the.
So one of the things that we did want to talk about was, as it was mentioned, these are kind of like circular patterns, as you can see, and we're kind of talking about it being a really busy cityscape into like having a gate into like a quieter space. So it doesn't actually work just as it's a straightforward, it just keeps getting. It's more so you have to figure out where the entrance is to enter the next stage of getting closer to your spiritual like self. Because it's a struggle, it's not like a switch.
Well, it's context priming. It's yeah, you'd have to have the element of time in order to get into the mindset to be worshipful or whatever. Yeah.
So that was what we wanted, and it kind of goes. It basically depends on also how a person is, how driven the person is to reach spirituality. Right? It's not like a switch where you're just like, okay, now when I experience this, I'm just gonna walk right through. So we wanted to add that sort of aspect of making it slightly challenging to actually reach where you find peace ultimately.
That's great.
So,
Did making this help you? I mean, the photograph of this communicates a ton.
Yeah.
But is the act of physical modeling helpful?
I'm not part of this group.
Oh. We are.
Do you imagine that would be helpful?
Yeah.
I think it was. I think it was really fun to like actually get engaged with it. Where, to actually see
Was it easier to put yourself in that user's position, or is this more useful for designing for that user, do you think? Is it more for empathy or sympathy?
I think empathy. Definitely empathy for at least in my opinion. We didn't actually get to this earlier discussion as a team, but I would think more so empathy only because all this while we were all also brainstorming and coming up with the ideas as a group, and this is where we physically got involved with it as a group, and we all like saw what we envisioned together.
Well, I can feel it's closer, the height of the transom there. I'm not sure that a drawing would communicate that as well. It's something about the Play-Doh, yeah. It's wonderful.
They did a really good job of like trying to give it that dimension. We just like did it on this back table over here, and like one person was like propping up the back, and then someone else was like,
Yeah, that's really, really great. Nice work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect timing.
So allowing a vision of part of something to represent the whole of something, and not becoming so inundated with the whole that you that you miss out on the details, and that you just like kind of like give like the gloss over, right? So in service of that, and especially for park staff who probably have to interact with the space pretty frequently,
we came up with a system that actually highlights the aberrant item, whether that's a lost backpack or the Hamburglar or a broken fence or anything that might not belong in the program. Yeah,
No hamburglers.
No,
We hate that guy.
It's not cool.
I love that choice, by the way. It communicates a ton and it's fun at the same time.
Sophie did a good job with that one. But anyway, so yeah, the idea is to kind of highlight the pieces of the scene that are out of place or abnormal in such a way that the Park Service staff from a remote location can assess them and either determine that they're not really a problem at all and just dismiss that notification. They can flag it to someone potentially on site or to emergency services that could be immediately called without having to go to that and investigate it themselves. Or in certain cases, provide some level of visitor service or FAQ, or potentially have like one of those information display pedestals that can be kind of augmented and manipulated as questions arise or as people input questions of that. So it could be a potentially interactive system with park visitors, although that's the least fleshed out of our plans and the least zen view of them, to be fair. We had a lot of jokes. Yeah, I mean, we did theoretically, and I think part of the goal, especially on this kind of Big Brother surveillance implementation.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I know, right?
When there's a little too much, like, you look suspicious. But anyway, Fort Mason is a pretty small park, right? And there are a lot of these kind of small parks in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I think it would be possible for this kind of VR system to work as a central hub for park services to monitor 5 or 6 different sites and alert janitorial staff that only this one needs working on today and just kind of deploy as needed, rather than having dedicated on-site staff for every individual location that would have to basically perform the same function. That was already a hope to make the entirety of it. Oh yeah.
Were cleanliness and safety the biggest buckets that you had for your jobs?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you prioritize them relative to each other?
Yes, because the thing is that like we're thinking about Zen View, really it's about the idea of maintenance and preservation, and that's why we prioritize this over everything else.
Yeah.
Because it's about the idea of maintaining the space at the same time to ensure that the space, something that changes the zen of the space, we're allowed to react to that. And then in that sense, it also because I think a huge part of our discussion was determining the line between what is preventative and what is reactive to maintain right? Ideas about safety and area scans, those things are reactive. There's also the idea of maintaining the space, a tree needs trimming, this needs cleaning. It's not in response to something, it's just continuing something.
Does that proactive, reactive thing register in differences in the activity diagram at all?
Very little, realistically, since most of it is a monitoring system.
Yep.
You can only prevent something that you notice, and so it's still reactive.
Yes, good answer. Yes.
Yeah, but then I personally like the idea that because it's somewhat reactive, it allows a human to sort of interweave themselves with the VR, where the VR may be able to find things and find patterns, but really it's ultimately the human that makes the decision. So a huge part of that is the idea of whether or not you can flag a person as someone who is a danger to the space, in this case the Hamburglar, or if it's just someone who's just occupying the space in a very non-invasive way. Right? We can that non-invasive.
Do nothing, flag for later.
Exactly.
Right. So that's the biggest difference here is the cleanliness realistically could probably be handled by an AI. They can run through and say, your trash rate is 10% up, it's time to get it down. It doesn't really need human intervention.
Yeah.
You can, if it's something like a broken fence or something that, could theoretically be pushed off for later for secondary reasons or whatever. Safety, in order to be less AI surveillance, kind of requires a human touch.
Yeah.
Otherwise you get into some really awkward.
It did certainly.
How much suffering does it appear that there's happening there? Do we care about the suffering of these people?
Yeah, that one doesn't look like the kind of person I want in my park.
Yeah. That's great. Would you use this?
I think it's an interesting way to maintain a space, right? Where they're not necessarily interacting with the space, they're flagging things and they're allowing other people to interact. So it definitely feels like they're Big Brother behind the screen.
Yep.
But it's a way to, I guess, monitor a space without having to be in there, and interact with the place, but not really in the physical sense.
Well, I really like how you're applying this woo-woo Zen thing to information overload kind of a problem. Like it's helping conserve the right kind of attention on the part of the operator, which I think the pattern lends itself to. That's great. Nicely done.
Do we have class next Monday?
Yes. But nothing's due. We're all done by then.
You can get a good sense of like what the weather's like, what like the forest expectations are.
Observers can really see what it's calling for, and then they would either draw a sketch or take notes about what their idea was. And the idea is that as other students enter, they might also be able to see the sketches and notes. And then as they would move around the bench, they would start triggering different pockets of information. So, for instance, here, if they get around to this part of the bench, they'd be able to see which is showing and they would begin to see like the bench being built and be able to see the materials that were used. And then if they move to the next stage, they'd be able to see Christopher Alexander gathering with the community and like how that process went of discussion and like the space needed. And so you just keep going through all the stages to get different types of information. And then because they're returning architecture students, the idea is that anytime they would come back after they finish their initial walkthrough of the space, they would theoretically be able to remember where the information was at different points and be able to simply skip ahead and walk to whatever section they wanted to.
That's like the 200 years project did by the university, where you can see the old, for example, there's old image of this building, and you use your whatever AR to see that, and then over time, how does it change?
Yeah. So we wanted to show that architecture, that process is really important. So we wanted to figure out a way to show that. We didn't necessarily rank our jobs to be done, because we realized that in this particular case with Holy Ground, it's important that you move through the jobs in a specific order. So it's ordered out by like which one you have to go through. And we also threw in some time of day. So when you're passing through this sky would be dark or before dawn when you start. Towards the middle, it would be high noon. Because with religion, there's all of that time passing and kind of moving through these different stages of life. So we wanted to be able to allow the user to kind of have a marker in time as well in the active space.
That's wonderful. Okay, let's do one more rotation. Finish up your pitches and swap back out with your teammates.
Yeah, we are. Very cool. Thank you. Want to hear about it, Rick?
Yes.
All right. So the way we approach Zane is how to entice people, give people a sneak peek, and not the whole story. That's the design philosophy we're carrying when we're thinking of different features. So basically, and also imagine the special place about VR is to allow you to experience something that's unreal. You can go travel to the space, or you can go under ocean with VR. You also want to think of something that's not always reality, because reality can be boring. That's where we have some of the practical feature to help people achieve Zing. Also, we have some of the fantasy feature that's give you a world of magic. For example, here we have a tree maze where imagine this is the bench, and then but you don't see it. You park your car somewhere here, and then you walk around through this beautiful tree maze that have floating windows, like in Harry Potter, where different ocean view as if you were standing here, seeing the ocean. You can see different clouds, sky, time of day, lighting, suns change throughout different windows that's floating on the tree maze. And then as you're walking through the tree maze, and then to this area, that's where we have this drifting bottle beach. It's like we're gonna go for hunting for fortune cookies, where you open this different drifting bottle, slow it down, you read people's secrets, best wishes, beautiful poem, and everything. You can write back and throw it back to the ocean without real polluting it. But you take the time and getting close to the ocean and just feel so calm, so zen, so in the flow state of mind. And then you know these all happening around the bench, but you're not seeing the real bench. But these are the experience we create for you in the VR experience, because we want to let you have that zen feel without knowing the magic bench. So that's the whole idea.
We also have some features lately. We'll suggest the packing list and suggest that utility
Yeah, these are logistically great information to prepare you. If you were to go there, you don't have to worry about all this, what should I wear?
Yep.
Do I have a place to stay? All that stuff. So we have practical features, fantasy features, and everything.
I love. This is hard to draw that way. Who did that? Can you tell me, like, how is that something you've drawn before? Is it?
I
No, it really helps create that sense of how weird it is in there. Yeah, a continuous sense of place. Yeah, no, it's really good. And what's going on down here? This is a storyboard.
Yeah, this is Storyboard. It's pretty self-explanatory because we're thinking of user journey. This is where what you are going to see when you are in that VR set, but we're also imagining before they actually pick up the VR set, what's their user journey, what's their thought process going to be look like. So we sort of imagined the whole process of a user from having this need or thinking about going here to actually put on the VR and experience everything, and then prepare his or her actual trip. That's the user journey.
And did you draw these also?
No. Another member draw this.
It's really the talent of drawing is not something that I have, and I try to set these things up so you don't need it. But my God, it's beautiful when somebody does have those talents. Is there any?
Now here's the. Yeah.
I love your storyboard.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Kaiwen.
Did you, in the process of putting this together, change your mind about anything about what it should do, like through the process of storyboarding or doing that illustration work? Did it change what you thought you were doing?
I think we definitely had like more emphasized conversations around Zen, like near the end, just remembering to reincorporate that. It was very easy to get swept up away in like all the features that could be included. So especially when we were storyboarding, we were thinking about like, well, how could this help a tourist plan things and schedule? Like, how could they see in real time? Like, we could make an itinerary for them and a packing list and all this stuff. And then Kaiwen, I think, was really helpful in bringing us back into, well, what do we want that Zen space of mind to look like for a tourist? Sometimes planning is very stressful, and so to amplify the planning process may not be exactly our goal with this, but more to amplify like these sneak peek Zen views of a space and build anticipation to visit there. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it felt like you were getting at the mindset that this allows you to experience might not be for the act of planning in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like you would do this, and then you would be able to then. Now I'm going to make a list. I'm going to.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like you want to be in an event. It's like, I don't know if some people like to, meditate or something, or be in a quiet space before approaching like a very complex task or orchestrating something very involved. And so maybe this would be more before you put your itinerary together and make your plan and pack your stuff.
Yep.
We just want to give you an enticing view into what it could be like once you're there. So you have a goal in mind before setting all the details.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Progressive these days.
I actually don't quite know how that got started. Our thing was we wanted the space to, I guess it was partially following the Zen view idea. So you have this view, you have this holy space, you have these beautiful views around you. And so it's just kind of adding on top of it. It's trying to make the space more sacred and have that much more layer of separation on top of giving people a view into different dimensions. I guess the way that it started was within virtual reality, and so you're thinking, what would the space look like in its unimpeded form? And so it was removing the like layers and all that, or the guardrails, because that's clearly not how the architect. Well, we don't think that that's how like Christopher Alexander intended it. It breaks up the space. It distorts the view that's made by the bench. So we went from that to saying, okay, well, that's actually kind of a look back. What other looks back or forward can we do that shows the beauty of the space? Yeah, yeah, stays. And I guess the pedestal in the center, like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, yep. And this whole idea was like, so when we were designing gates, like I did a lot of sketches with them. I didn't want them to be rounded to any one specific time period. So I didn't want it to be like Japanese Shinto gates or, you know, kind of archways or anything like that. I wanted it to be ambiguous and like slightly futuristic looking, so that there's not really any like cultural connection to it. There's not really it's a gate, but you don't really know like what it's. Mm-hmm. Similar, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there's some design for this principal window on space. I was like racking my brain and I was talking actually like get the perception of like the gates or the layers of separation from society and the space around it's really difficult to try to do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Did you hear most of it? Or?
I did, but you can start again.
Yeah. So I guess our pattern's holy ground. Our encounter is a accidental first encounter. And we're with virtual reality. So the idea is that people stumble upon this virtually. As they're going through the space, they meet as they get closer, they meet an animal. And so it's this ethereal kind of spirit animal that basically leads them towards the beginning of the gates. And these gates are taken like literally as like physical gates, in accordance with Holy Ground. It's kind of difficult to show that separation, but and so as the user passes through the gates, they learn a little bit more about the space until they reach the bench. And on this bench, we also incorporated a little bit of the Zen view. So the whole idea is that you have these objects, and each one of them brings you to a different time period. So it's prehistoric, 1850s, and then future. And then the windows behind them are almost like tears in time, and so you can see into them. So that's where the Zen view comes in the windows. And so as the user picks this up and puts it on the pedestal, basically the area changes into that time period, with the bench still remaining the pedestal. So you have this even greater separation of the normal from the sacred.
Well, and you also activate the space of that strange.
Yeah.
It makes more sense as a pedestal than an ottoman.
It does, much more so.
One of our challenges with this too is just that thinking about a first-time user, someone who like stumbles upon this, they are not likely to be in a mindset of reflection and thinking about like spiritual engagement. So we wanted it to be attractive to draw them in, hence the night theme and the glowing, like the animals glowing. The animal serves as a hook to try to pull them in and entice them to go deeper and through the gates. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and a lot of what we were thinking about was like video game kind of stuff. So we wanted it to be whimsical. We wanted this to feel like it was like an adventure, like where, like in Legend of Zelda, you have Navi, and it's like you have this like thing that's kind of following you around and like guiding you. But unlike that in Ocarina of Time, like not super intrusive and like, hey, listen, kind of attitude. So we wanted this to be a very surreal kind of experience, very calming but adventurous kind of thing.
It's great.
Kristen's not here, but she did this awesome outline of the fox from the mosaic, which we didn't really learn much about, like why the choices of those animals.
We didn't, yeah.
But it was interesting to think about how that could come out of the bench into a virtual guide.
Yeah, guide.
Well, and if the animal, if you use it for other places, and if it remembers what it did with you in the other places as a way to knit together your other virtual things.
We also thought about it becoming almost like an navigation, like a hamburger menu, except in this virtual space. So once it gives you the instructions on the place or talks to you about the place, it can shift into like just like a glowing blue orb or something like that. So it kind of gives that secondary functionality.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Did you change your in the act of sketching and posterizing and rendering? Did you have to kill any of your initial darlings or let go of?
We killed a big darling. We one of the first ideas was like a Mexican ofrenda.
I'm not sure I know what that is.
Okay. It's a place where you can go and put up pictures and candles to remember your loved ones.
Okay.
Because you have maybe a time of year for the Day of the Dead.
Yep.
Where there's a belief that the veil is a little bit thinner and that you can really commune with your relatives. And so we thought about having on the pedestal a place where maybe there's like just a candle and a match, and it's an invitation to remember somebody yourself.
That's lovely.
And then you light it, and maybe we hadn't really gone that far with it, but maybe after you enter into that Holy Spirit yourself of remembering a loved one, maybe you can see all the other ones that everybody else put up too.
Wow.
Depending on the level of privacy that they wanted. So that was a big darling that really came close to being what we did there, but we decided to go with this instead.
And I would actually say that we didn't fully scrap it because one of the things that I designed when I was sketching these out was after you interacted with all of these, it expands into like an and so it was something that like didn't make the final chop, but like could potentially be there for like you've completed this, now you join those who have done this as well with
We didn't cite all of our influences either, but Richard McGuire's graphic novel / like avant-garde book, it's called Here by Richard McGuire, and you can flip through it once place, but there are frames, like comic book frames throughout that are windows to the distant past or far future. And that inspired the notion of these sort of tears in the fabric of space-time in which you can see a different time and place.
Yeah.
That idea also reminds me of people who put a lock on a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing like the gates there. I wonder if there's because that registering the evidence of other people being there helps or distracts, just depending on what it is.
Maybe like the star adds to the galaxy whenever or something like that.